Real interstellar comet glowing brighter every night, and scientists are watching because 3i Atlas is about to make its closest pass yet.
On December the 19th, at his annual televised press conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin was asked a question about 3i Atlas. A reporter from Tyumen wanted to know if Russia's intelligence services had determined whether this approaching object was an alien spacecraft or just a comet, and whether Russia was prepared to welcome extraterrestrial visitors. And Putin actually answered. He didn't deflect. He didn't laugh it off. He gave a real response that showed he'd been briefed on the details. So what did the president of Russia say about 3i Atlas? And what made this comet important enough that a world leader had to address it publicly at a major press conference, watched by millions of people? Chapter 1. What Putin said and why the timing matters. The annual press conference that Putin holds every December is basically a marathon event. It lasts about 4 hours, and they get something like 2.5 million questions submitted ahead of time from Russian citizens. And out of those millions of questions, someone asking about an interstellar comet actually made the cut and got asked on live television. The reporter was a woman named Kristina from Tyumen, which is known as the oil capital of Russia, and she stood up and said, "I have a question about the unusual object 3i Atlas, which is currently approaching us. If the predictions are to be believed today, December 19th, either a spacecraft with an engine or just a comet will approach Earth. My question is this: what do intelligence services report to you? Are there really signs of artificial origin? As funny as it may sound, there are indeed many theories and speculations. We at Tyumen are ready to welcome any guests, but if they are from space, we would like to prepare." And Putin leaned into the microphone with this wry smile on his face and said, "I'll tell you, but it must remain exclusively between us. This is classified information. It's our secret weapon, but we will only use it in the most extreme case because we are against deploying weapons in space." And the entire room erupted in nervous laughter because nobody knew if he was joking or if this was one of those situations where Putin says something outrageous and you're not sure whether he's being serious or not. People were laughing, but you could also see them looking at each other like, wait, is he actually saying this is a Russian weapon? But then Putin switched gears completely and got serious. He said, "Seriously though, it's a comet. Our scientists are aware of what is happening. Moreover, this is a comet from another star, so it behaves differently from comets of our galactic origin. It has a different shell, and as it approaches closer to the Sun, slightly different processes occur on its surface, including in the tail of this object. Things look different there, but it's quite large. I think somewhere between 2 to 6 kilometers. And then he put it in perspective by saying, "Look, the moon is 400,000 kilometers away from us, and the object you are talking about is hundreds of millions of kilometers away. I don't think it poses any threat to us." Now, the timing of this question is not a coincidence. December 19th was the exact day that 3i Atlas made its closest approach to Earth at a distance of about 170 million miles. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the peak of visibility, the best chance to observe this thing before it started heading back out of the solar system. So reporters around the world were asking questions about it, scientists were doing live streams, amateur astronomers were setting up telescopes, and apparently Russian state intelligence had briefed Putin on what they knew about it. And what's remarkable about Putin's answer is that he actually knew the details. He wasn't just reading from a card or giving some generic politician response. He understood that this was an interstellar comet. He knew it had unusual surface properties. He knew the estimated size range. He knew it wasn't a threat. Russian scientists had clearly given him a proper briefing, and he absorbed the information well enough to explain it coherently on live television. This is significant because Russia takes space very seriously. They launched the first satellite Sputnik in 1957. They put the first human Yuri Gagarin in orbit in 1961. They've maintained a continuous presence on the International Space Station for decades, and they're currently one of only 3 countries that can launch humans into space. When Putin talks about space, his audience expects scientific literacy, not hand-waving, because space exploration is deeply embedded in Russian national pride and identity. The Soviet space program was one of the crown jewels of the USSR, and modern Russia still sees itself as a major spacefaring power. So the fact that a reporter felt comfortable asking this question at a major press conference, and the fact that Putin treated it as a legitimate scientific topic rather than a joke, tells you something about how much mainstream attention 3I Atlas was getting. This wasn't some fringe topic relegated to science blogs. This was front-page news, serious enough that it made it into Putin's annual marathon press event, where he typically focuses on domestic policy, international relations, and the economy. But it also raises the question, why was this reporter asking if it might be artificial in the first place? What about 3I Atlas made people genuinely wonder if this could be alien technology rather than just a rock from space? Chapter 2. The anomalies that sparked alien speculation. The reason people were asking whether 3I Atlas might be artificial is because this thing has been doing stuff that comets are not supposed to do. And we're not talking about vague speculation or conspiracy theories, we're talking about documented observations published in peer-reviewed scientific journals by credible researchers, including a Harvard astrophysicist who spent 6 months building a case that this object displays characteristics inconsistent with natural formation. The most striking visual feature that amateur astronomers captured on December 19th was the anti-tail. This is a jet of material pointing directly at the sun, instead of away from it, and in the images taken that day, it extended nearly 1 million kilometers from the nucleus. That's longer than the distance from the Earth to the Moon. And it wasn't just long, it was tightly collimated, meaning it formed this very narrow, focused beam, rather than spreading out like normal cometary tails do. Avi Loeb from Harvard looked at this data and said, "We have never witnessed such a long, tightly collimated anti-tail in any comet ever observed. This alone is unprecedented." But that's just one anomaly. Loeb had documented 15 separate weird characteristics about 3I Atlas over the course of its passage through the solar system. The trajectory alignment with the ecliptic plane had only a 0.2% probability of occurring by chance. The direction it came from in the galaxy aligned to within 9 degrees of the famous Boao signal from 1977, that mysterious radio transmission that might have been from an alien civilization, and that alignment had a 0.6% probability. The rotation axis pointed directly at the Sun when it entered the solar system with a 0.5% probability. The chemistry was equally strange. The gas cloud around 3I Atlas contained way more nickel than iron, and the ratio was similar to what you'd find in industrially produced nickel alloys. Natural comets have nickel and iron in roughly equal amounts because they form together in dying stars. But 3I Atlas showed nickel without the expected iron signature, which is weird. And the water content was only about 4% by mass, whereas normal comets are typically 80% water ice. The whole composition was backwards. The physical behavior was off too. During its perihelion passage when it got closest to the Sun, 3I Atlas brightened about 400 times more than what you'd expect from a typical comet at that distance. It turned bluer than the Sun itself for a brief period, which is extremely unusual because comets typically get redder as they approach the Sun due to increased dust production. It's more massive than both of the previous interstellar objects we've detected, 1I Oumuamua and 2I Borisov, but it's also moving faster than both of them. The velocity alone is remarkable, traveling at about 58 kilometers per second relative to the Sun, which is roughly double the speed of the other interstellar visitors. The extreme negative polarization it showed was unprecedented for any comet ever observed. Polarization tells us about how light scatters off particles in the coma, and 3I Atlas showed the most extreme negative values ever recorded. The tail morphology changed dramatically over the course of just days, going from multiple distinct jets to a single unified plume and back again. And the rotation period of about 16 hours, combined with the observed brightness variations, suggested either a very elongated shape or an uneven surface composition, neither of which fits the profile of a normal spherical comet nucleus. When you multiply all these probability numbers together, you get something astronomically unlikely. Not impossible, but the kind of number that makes scientists start asking uncomfortable questions about whether there might be another explanation besides random chance. And that's why Loeb was publishing papers suggesting this could be artificial, why a congresswoman from Florida wrote a letter to NASA demanding they investigate, why news outlets were covering it as a potential alien spacecraft story. The reporter asking Putin about this wasn't being ridiculous. She was asking about a genuine scientific mystery that had legitimate researchers genuinely puzzled. These weren't fringe conspiracy theorists making stuff up on the internet. These were astronomers using the best telescopes available and finding data that didn't fit the models. And in the Russian context, this question made even more sense. Russians are proud of their space program, and they're scientifically literate enough as a population to follow these kinds of stories. When your country put Yuri Gagarin into orbit and built the Soyuz spacecraft that still carries people to the ISS, you don't dismiss questions about interstellar objects as silly. You take them seriously because space science is part of your national identity. So when Putin joked about it being Russia's secret weapon, he was playing to the crowd, getting a laugh, but then he pivoted to giving a real scientific explanation because that's what the audience expected. But was his scientific explanation actually correct? Or did he dismiss something that scientists still can't explain? Chapter 3. Putin was right, mostly, and what's next? Here's the thing. Putin's scientific assessment was pretty much spot on. When he said, it's a comet from another star, that's correct. We know it's an interstellar object based on its hyperbolic trajectory and the velocity it's traveling at. When he said, it has a different shell, that's also correct. The surface composition is dominated by carbon dioxide ice rather than water ice, which is unusual. When he said different processes occur on its surface, he was right about that too. We've observed ice volcanoes erupting and unusual sublimation patterns that don't match local comets. His size estimate of 2 to 6 kilometers is roughly in the right ballpark. The actual measurements are uncertain because the thick coma makes it hard to resolve the nucleus directly, but estimates range from about 440 meters on the small end to 5.6 kilometers on the high end. So Putin's range captures the most likely values. And when he said, I don't think it poses any threat to us, that's absolutely correct. At 170 million miles away, it's nowhere near a collision course with Earth. So Putin either got a very good briefing from Russian scientists, or he actually paid attention during the briefing, because his explanation was accurate without being overly simplified. He understood the key point that this object came from another star system, and therefore has characteristics we haven't seen before because it formed in a different environment with different chemical conditions. But that doesn't mean the alien technology question was stupid. All 15 of those anomalies that Loeb documented are real. They're published in peer-reviewed journals. They're based on actual observations from multiple telescopes. They represent genuine statistical outliers that don't have obvious natural explanations yet. The probabilities are what they are, and when you multiply low-probability events together, you get something that looks increasingly unlikely to be random. The thing that changed everyone's assessment, including Loeb's, was what happened on December 19th. 3I Atlas made its closest approach to Earth, and it didn't do anything. No maneuvers, no course corrections, no velocity changes beyond what the sun's gravity would naturally cause. No mysterious signals, no lights turning on, no indication of intelligent control whatsoever. And this is critical because if 3I Atlas had any kind of propulsion system, if it had the ability to steer itself, the Earth flyby would have been the moment to use it. Think about it from the perspective of an alien probe. You've spent billions of years traveling through interstellar space, and now you're approaching the only planet in this solar system that has life and civilization and radio broadcasts. You wouldn't just sail past without adjusting your trajectory to get a better look. You'd do something. You'd slow down. You'd change course. You'd turn on your instruments. But 3I Atlas just kept tumbling along on the exact path that gravitational physics predicted. It ignored Earth completely. Loeb himself said this in an interview just hours after the flyby. So far so good. 3I Atlas did not maneuver or display any unusual activity when it came closest to Earth. And that's what shifted the probability assessment. When you combine all those anomalies with the fact that the object didn't do anything during its best opportunity to interact with us, the natural explanation starts looking a lot more likely than the artificial one. And there is a natural explanation that accounts for most of the weirdness. 3I Atlas is estimated to be somewhere between 7 and 14 billion years old. That's nearly twice the age of our entire solar system. Our sun is only 4.6 billion years old, and most of the comets we're familiar with formed around that same time. But 3I Atlas comes from the thick disk of the Milky Way galaxy, where stars and planetary systems have been forming and dying for billions of years longer than in our local neighborhood. If you're 7 billion years old and you've spent all that time drifting through interstellar space, you're going to accumulate weird chemistry. You'll pass through different nebulae. You'll collect dust and gas from regions with completely different elemental abundances. You'll get hit by cosmic radiation that transforms your surface composition. Over billions of years, all of that adds up. Your chemistry gets altered. Your ice ratios change. You pick up metals and compounds that wouldn't be part of a young comet from our solar system. That's why the nickel content is off scale. That's why the CO2 dominates over water. That's why the surface processes look different. Putin's explanation of "it has a different shell" is basically correct. It's not that 3I Atlas was manufactured with weird materials, it's that it's ancient, and it's been weathered by billions of years of cosmic exposure that local comets never experienced. But the story isn't over yet. There's still one more major test coming. On March 16th, 2026, 3I Atlas will fly within 53.6 million kilometers of Jupiter. And Jupiter is interesting for a couple reasons. First, it's the most massive planet in the solar system with the strongest magnetic field, and if 3I Atlas has any kind of propulsion system or any reason to interact with planetary environments, Jupiter would be the place to do it. The giant planet's magnetosphere extends millions of kilometers into space and creates a unique environment that could potentially trigger responses from any onboard systems if they exist. Second, we have the Juno spacecraft in orbit around Jupiter right now, and it could potentially observe 3I Atlas during this flyby. Juno has high-resolution cameras and instruments designed to study magnetic fields and particle interactions. If 3I Atlas does anything unusual near Jupiter, we'll have a front-row seat to watch it happen. And the scientific value of this flyby goes beyond just the alien technology question. Observing how 3I Atlas interacts with Jupiter's radiation belts and magnetic field will tell us a lot about the object's composition and structure, even if it turns out to be completely natural. If 3I Atlas maneuvers near Jupiter, if it shows any unusual activity, if it does anything that can't be explained by natural outgassing or gravitational effects, then the alien technology theory comes roaring back, and everyone has to reassess. But if it just passes by Jupiter on the exact trajectory that physics predicts without doing anything weird, then the case is probably closed. It's just a very old, very unusual comet from a very different part of the galaxy. Looking back at Putin's joke about it being Russia's secret weapon, it's actually kind of perfect. He made people laugh, he showed he understood the public interest in this topic, and then he pivoted to giving a scientifically accurate explanation that treated the question with respect rather than mockery. Whether you like Putin or not, that was a pretty effective bit of public communication. He acknowledged the mystery, he explained what we know, and he reassured people it wasn't a threat. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. When a Russian president needs to address an interstellar comet at a major press conference, when millions of people submit questions about it, when mainstream news outlets cover it seriously, that tells you something about how much 3I Atlas captured the public imagination. We're living in a moment where interstellar visitors are no longer science fiction. They're real objects that we can observe and study and debate about. And whether they turn out to be natural or artificial, the fact that we're having these conversations at the highest levels of government shows how far we've come. Thanks for watching.